Please be upstanding for the chairman.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to welcome Gareth Davis and Diane Harold from the authority's external auditors, Mazars, who will be presenting the audit completion report for item 5 on the agenda. I've received apologies from Councillors Grayson, McMeekan, Sterling. Are there any other apologies for absence?
Yes, Chair, I have apologies from Councillors Day, Hall, Allen and Gary Madden, and Councillor Osborne is on her way but may be late.
Thank you, Councillor Early.
Councillor Graham.
Councillor Graham.
Councillor Hall.
Councillor Hall, thank you.
Councillor Carroll-Burgess.
Councillor Carroll-Burgess.
Chair. Sorry, Chair, I was indicating before. Councillor Miller is unable to be here tonight. Councillor McIntyre will be, but a little bit late.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can members please sign the relevant attendance sheet, please? Can I remind members, if they have a registrable interest and non-registrable interests in the matters appearing on the agenda, they must verbally declare such interests and the nature of those interests. You're invited to disclose any dispensation from the requirement to declare any registrable or non-registrable interests and have been granted to you in respect of matters appearing on the agenda. Those members should complete the cards circulated and return it to the receptacle located at the desk of the Democratic Services officers before leaving. Can I ask the monitoring officer to briefly advise members in relation to motion on the NGC pay?
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the second motion on the agenda tonight, which concerns an invitation to the Mayor to write to certain bodies and individuals to support changes to local authority pay and pay scales review, several members have sought advice about whether they have an interest in that motion that must be declared at this meeting because they have a relative who works for the authority. All members will have received advice by email about this yesterday. I can confirm that it is not an interest that must be declared in accordance with the authority's Code of Conduct for members. However, if members do have relatives who work for the authority, it would be appropriate to declare this to the meeting in any event for the purposes of transparency. If you intend to speak to the motion, you may wish to take the opportunity to acknowledge that you have a family member who is employed by the authority at that point, and it will be noted in the minutes of the meeting. Otherwise, you can advise the meeting now if you would prefer. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Councillor Spillard.
Thank you, Chair. I have a relative who works for the authority.
Thank you. Councillor Drummond.
Thank you, Chair. Just in the interest of transparency, the Fire Authority, I'm subject to NGC pay scales.
Councillor Madden.
Yes, I have a relative who works for the authority.
Thank you. Councillor Burders.
I also have a relative that works for the local authority.
Councillor Bell. So, Councillor Rankin.
Guess what I'm going to say, Chair? I've got a relative that works for the authority.
Councillor Councillor Gary Bell.
The same.
I forgot Councillor Glindon.
No, Chair, May Doran Law works for the council.
I got no, and it's Councillor McGaw. Sorry I've left you. Sorry there, Councillor McGaw.
Yeah, I've got a relative who works for the council as well.
Thank you, Councillor McGaw. Are we anyone else that would like to declare an interest? Thank you. The next item, item 3, is the minutes of the council meeting held on the 20th of July 2017, which have been previously circulated. Can I ask council to confirm those minutes? Thank you. The next item is item 4, motions. The next motion 1, signed by councillors Glindon and Grayson and Hall, is the MND Charter. Can I invite Councillor Early to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the opportunity to move this motion. Motor neurone disease is a pernicious disease, which is also a rapidly progressing one, and which affects the brain and the spinal cord. It attacks the nerves controlling movement so that muscles no longer work. It is a fatal disease, and it can leave people locked in a failing body, unable to move, talk, and eventually to breathe. It kills around 30% of people within 12 months of diagnosis and more than 50% within 2 years. It affects people from all communities and has no cure. Every UK adult has a 1 in 300 risk of developing the disease. MND kills 6 people per day in the UK. It affects around 5,000 people in the UK at any one time, and there are approximately 300 sufferers in the North East. There are 10 people with motor neurone disease in North Tyneside currently being supported by our council. Whilst that may seem a small number, the needs of people with MND can be complex and fast changing because the disease itself can progress rapidly. As the motion says, Northumbria Healthcare Trust Commission support people with MD in our area. So you may ask why it is important that we ask our Cabinet to adopt the MND Charter. The answer is that because both collectively as a council and individually as councillors, we can play a vital role in supporting people with MND and their carers living in our borough. We take decisions on the planning of services which people with MND rely on, such as social care, housing, home adaptations, carers assessments and services, healthcare and public transport. As the MND Charter says, people with MND have the right to be treated as individuals with dignity, care and respect. This includes being offered a personal care plan to specify what care and support they need, getting the support to make the right choices to meet their needs when using personalised care options, and prompt access to appropriate communication and support aids. They have the right to maximise their quality of life, which means timely and appropriate access to equipment, wheelchairs, home adaptations and suitable housing. Because the disease often develops quickly, people's needs change quickly, and often it is about ensuring that these changing needs are anticipated so they are met in a timely way. The other important aspect of the MND Charter, which we as a council can affect, is in working to ensure that the carers of people with MND are valued, respected, listened to and well supported. Caring for someone with motor neurone disease is both physically and emotionally demanding, and therefore it is essential that carers are supported to enable them to maintain their caring roles. This includes things such as timely and appropriate access to respite care, information, counselling and bereavement services, advising carers re their legal right to a care assessment to ensure appropriate support, and timely and appropriate access to benefits and entitlements for carers to help manage their financial impact of their caring role. Adoption of the Charter will allow the Council to promote awareness of the disease and the Charter within the Council, with our staff, with partner organisations and health and social care professionals. In adopting the Charter, we will be sending a strong message to local people with motor neurone disease that their voice is heard and that they are valued, respected and supported by North Tyneside Council. Once the Charter is adopted, we can work in partnership with the MND Association and access the specialist support they provide, such as free educational packages and training to help us improve the lives of people with motor neurone disease. In adopting the Charter, we will be taking the first step, which many of our other neighbouring councils have already taken, including Northumberland, Durham and Cumbria. You may at this point be asking yourself about the potential cost to the Council of adopting the Charter. The answer is that this is a positive step which we can take at little or no extra cost, because it is about raising awareness of the disease and its effects, which will help our understanding and that of our staff to deliver our existing services more speedily and efficiently to people suffering from the disease in the borough. For example, people with motor neurone disease may lose the ability to speak, so it can be frustrating when someone is calling the council on their behalf if there's an insistence on the part of the officer that they need to speak directly to the person concerned. or it may be something as simple as ensuring that a person with motor neuron disease is not repeatedly asked to give the same information again and again at different stages in an application process. Some councils who have adopted the Charter and who now work in partnership with the MND Association believe that because they can access free specialist educational support through the association, it can actually result in a financial saving to their council. I think it is rare in the life of the council where taking such a simple step can do so much potential good for a group of our residents who are so much in need of our help and support, and I hope the council will support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Early. Can I ask Councillor Percy to second the motion, please? Are you reserving the right to speak? Yes. Are there any questions? And questions must be brief and seeking points of clarification. And I will... sorry, Councillor Wallace, I didn't see you there. Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an awful disease and we thoroughly support the motion, so I propose that we go straight to the vote so that we can proceed with this, expressing our support in favour of it.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor Wallace. Thank you. So does everyone to go straight to the vote?
Chair.
It needs to be seconded. We did, well, Councillor, you did second it, yes.
Chair, I'd like to speak on the motion.
Sorry, Councillor Clinton.
Chair, the reason I like to speak is because my father died of it. He left school at 14 and went down a rising sun pit until the war broke out. And because he was in the TA, he was away during the war. He actually won the military medal in Burma during the war. Came back from the war, the next day he was back down the pit again. In 1970 he got a numbness in his leg, and he was a bit like me, he didn't want to go to the doctors and this, that and the other. My mother actually took him to the doctors. 6'6", my father, so I don't know where I come from, but obviously not from his stock. So from there I went to the General Hospital up on the West Road, and I went up with my mum and they'd done several tests on him, and what they said was it's a disease called motor neuron disease. I'm only going back 40 odd years, but people didn't know what it was. I went into the hospital with my mum to see the specialist, and he couldn't tell anything about it other than the fact that my dad was going to die. I think it took 2 years from that day that he died. He died a horrific death. We actually donated his brain to motor neuron for tests. There was no help from councils then, which is what we're talking about here now. No help at all. We're left on our own. There was no internet, so you couldn't search for what it was. Nobody knew what it was. And nobody heard about it until, like, famous people like Sir Don Revy got it, and then it became a subject that everybody started talking about. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, what's being done here tonight is a remarkable, because nobody will think about it until somebody in the family is affected by it. And I think if the council takes this route, because the council wouldn't help us at all. Councils didn't help people then. I mean, his toilet was a dining room chair which I cut a hole in, which was, you know, an embarrassment for him. But that's what he did in them days. But councils now do put the support in. These people put the support in. A lot of support. I've talked to a gentleman earlier on tonight. You know, to me, this motion should be accepted by every member of this council here tonight. And I just thank you for bringing it to our attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Glendon, for sharing that. Thank you. So, can I invite the mover to the motion to exercise the right of reply? Did you want to say anything else?
No, I've got nothing to add, Chair.
Okay. Well, we'll just go straight to the vote then. All those in favour? Unanimous. That's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you to the representatives from the MOD. Thank you. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Thanks. Next, we've got a motion for the NJCP. Can I invite Councillor Pickard to move the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair.
Public sector pay was frozen from 2010 to 2013, and pay rises have been capped at 1% since 2013. The pay cap has led to a dramatic real-term drop in the earnings in recent years. Retail price inflation continues to be above the level of the cap, leading to a steady erosion of public sector workers' standards of living, resulting in a basic pay falling by 21% in real terms since 2010. Even Tory cabinet members recognise the unjust effect of the pay cap. Boris Johnson, Foreign Secretary, Michael Gove, the Environmental Secretary, Jeremy Hunt, the Health Secretary, and Justin Greening, the Education Secretary, have all called for the 1% ceiling on wage rises to be lifted for austerity-weary workers. However, it's not just the pay rise that is concerned to this council. As a council, we face the implementation of the government's living wage due to increase from the 2016 rate of £7.50 to £9 by 2020. This alone is an unfunded rise of over 15%. But it's not only the effect on our wage bill, it's also the increasing costs that we have to pay to our suppliers, particularly in the care industry. There's also the problem that while introducing this, it has resulted in the bunching up of the pay spine points, and to reach the £9, we'll have to combine from scale point 6 to scale point 16, including many hundreds of our staff. This has been at the expense of those at the bottom on the pay rate, and this has led to the jobs being squashed together at the bottom of our pay structure. With supervisors being paid similar rates to those they supervise, we believe that they should not have their living conditions cut to fund this. Applying the legal minimum pay rise at the bottom of the pay scale and cutting the pay for everyone else is not fair. Council budgets have been slashed by at least 40% since 2010, and they should not have to cut services to fund a decent pay rise or the introduction of the living wage, and that this should be a fair pay rise above the 1%, and this should be funded by the government on a national basis. We as a council are proud that we introduced the living wage foundation rate for our workers from September. That's the UK foundation rate of £8.45. That's because this council recognises the dedicated and professional contribution our staff make to ensure that we can deliver excellent services, public services, to our residents. Public sector workers, including those in local government, nurses, teachers, police officers and firefighters, deserve a fairer deal for the future. Therefore, I ask the Council to agree to this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Can I ask Councillor Bulger to second the motion, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to second this motion. I would like you to join me in supporting the National Joint Council Pay Claim 2018, submitted by Unison, JMB and Unite on behalf of council and school workers who were covered by the Green Book Collective Agreement. As my councillor friend mentioned, in 2010, workers were subjected to a 2-year pay freeze. Since then, the public sector pay cap of 1% has followed each subsequent year. In money terms, this equates to an average salary having dropped by £3,500. In reality, this is an 8-year pay cut, below the line of inflation, and worthy of note is the Consumer Price Index rose by 2.9% in August. These are real-term cuts families can no longer sustain. Let's compare this to the private sector, where pay rises have been 3 times higher. I ask you, is this fair? Should staff be further demoralised by having to stretch to such extremes as seeking assistance from food banks? Additionally, staff are making claims for the very first time, accessing benefits such as working and child tax credit to supplement their wages. Living standards are being squeezed. I ask you, shouldn't our staff be able to concentrate on their work rather than worry where they might get their evening meal from? Within the public sector, we have seen a selective lift on the 1% cap for police and prison officers. This goes some way to bridge the gap. Why not break the pay cap across the board? This motion does not ask the local authority to fund the increase from their already stretched budgets, but to apply pressure on central government to offer additional funding to finance the increase. Council, I call on you to end this public sector pay restraint.
Thank you, Councillor Bulger. Are there any questions? And can I remind members The questions must be brief and seeking points of clarification on the motion, and I will not allow political statements. Do you have any questions? Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman.
Sorry, can I just have a point of order? I don't think that's in the standing orders. Don't have it on but it says rules of debate.
It's actually at the discretion of the chair. It's just for the questions. You can
just
make
wondered
political,
if the Chief Legal Advisor could provide me with a copy of that paragraph saying that.
The conduct of the meeting is a matter for the chair, who is quite empowered to be controlling in terms of the extent of the questioning that happens.
There can be political statements after when we invite members to speak to the motion, but I want the questions to be points of clarification on the motion.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to ask the movers, with regard to their first bullet point, what inflation rates they are using to justify that statement.
Would you like RPI?
Which is what rate, please?
2.7 at the moment.
And in the previous 6 years?
I think we've got...
Just on to just below, without being accurate and giving you.
Thank you. With regard to the pay freeze and the 1% pay increase in the second bullet point, Madam Chairman, are there any increments or additional holiday entitlements that come into play?
I don't... I think it's a...
If you look, that's why the resolution is generic. Any terms above the 1% would have to be negotiated between the employer's side and the trade union side. That may or may not include terms and conditions, but you'd have to be a mind reader to know that until the conclusion of the discussions and negotiations.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. Do you have any more questions, Councillor Wallace?
Yes, Madam Chairman. For the third bullet point, what evidence do the movers have that the NJC pay is the lowest in the public sector? What other occupations, what other sectors have been considered?
Well, I think it's the public sector, isn't it?
What other fields within the public sector? No, the public sector. It says NJC pay is the lowest in the public sector. I'm asking what other parts have been considered by way of comparison.
As I recall, there were two reports, one which was suppressed by the Cabinet, which was from the Low Pay Foundation, which went into the issues of recruitment of senior managers and also things like the health service and non-council workers. Then there was another report on the statistics organisation that reports to the government, where it actually stated how far the low pay had fallen behind. They're all available on the government's website if you want to have a look.
What evidence is there for the claim that inflation may rise following the referendum vote?
Practical experience, it already has.
That's nonsense. When you talk of the current public sector pay inequality, which parts of the public sector are you contrasting?
Councillor Pickard?
I think, as you mentioned in the report there, it is said that the public sector workers combined who are paid under the NGSC pay scales have fallen behind compared to those on other areas in the public sector, and that this particular group of workers have been hit the hardest in real terms as far as the pay rises since 2010.
Councillor Wallace?
Are the movers suggesting that there should be the end of national pay bargaining and a return to local or regional bargaining?
I think
if you read the terms and conditions of the NGSA pay group, all it does is report on what the pay spines will be. It's then up to individual local employers to discuss with the trade unions what actual point following job evaluation that those individual jobs apply to.
Have you any more questions, Councillor Wallace? No, thank you. Do we have any more questions on the motion? Right, can I invite members to speak to the motion now, please? Councillor Hodgson?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We all welcome increased payment for our work. However, increased payments will be lost to inflation if they are not accompanied by productivity improvement. In the 60s and 70s, and I think early 80s, trade unions secured large wage increases for their members, only to find that inflation gobbled them up. These increases became pointless and destructive to social cohesion. When the government talks about these matters, they refer to the UK's poor productivity, one of the lowest in Europe. If the JNC are to make a real contribution to public sector employment wealth improvement, they will need to join with the government to measure the productivity improvement. If they can demonstrate this, then the case for the higher wages will be made. Chairman, until then, I see no point in this motion.
Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Chair. As you can see, I wasn't actually want to say anything, but I've just scribbled some stuff down here because judging by what's just been said by the councillor and what's just said by the question by Councillor Wallace, I think they're trying to overcomplicate the message we're giving here, and they're clearly missing the point. And the point is that the pay increase is completely justified because the whole of the UK is in desperate need of a pay rise. You know, we also got to remember that calls such as this for the NTC council and school workers to get a pay rise are actually symptoms of wider issues within the inequality within our economy. For example, pay stagnated across the entire public sector. For example, nurses using food banks. You know, how can we sit here and not try and ask for our public sector to get more wages when they're using food banks? And I remember Theresa May said that the issue around nurses using food bank was a complicated matter. Well, it's not. It's simply you're not paying them enough. It's as simple as that. We're not trying to overcomplicate this. You're not paying them enough. And then when we start talking about how you're going to fund this, well, let's be honest. If you can afford £1 billion to give the DUP bribes to keep Theresa May in her job, I'm pretty sure you can find some money to pay our public sector some more money. You know, I don't think this is an overly complicated issue, and I'm quite surprised that the Conservative Party there are trying to take this line of trying to overcomplicate what is a simple message. You're not paying the public sector enough.
Thank you, Councillor Newman. You got any, Councillor Wallace?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I think this motion makes several basic errors, and I think the answers to the initial questions demonstrate that it's poorly founded. The pay cap in the public sector is by no means universal, and we are glad that the government has indicated that the overall package for public sector staff must recognise their contribution and ensure the delivery of good services whilst being affordable and fair to the taxpayers. Changes to current policy must be fair and equitable. It's far from clear whether the movers of this motion are seeking public sector rises across the board or only for the lower paid. Are they looking at more cash for everybody or only for those which are considered most deserving? Do they want chief executives to get rises as well as those on the lower end of the pay scales, for example? There are huge differences in the way in which different areas of the public sector are paid. Some have seen significant increases in their incomes. It must also be noted that it's not only some in the public sector who've had little or no rise, many in the private sector are the same, and there is huge disparity, for example, between the generosity of public sector pensions and those for the private sector staff, which are generally less favourable, especially following Gordon Brown's raid on their funds some years ago. The movers haven't shown how they would fund increased pension liability, which is already a difficult issue for the public sector. With regard to public sector pay rises, I'd make two observations. Some public sector occupations, for example nurses, do get annual increments based on service length and annual increases in holiday entitlements, and these benefits are ignored by this motion. Other occupations have seen massive increases in remuneration. In Northumbria NHS Foundation Trust, I give a couple of examples from the executive directors. In 14-15, the finance director remuneration package was £200,000. By 15-16, it had risen to £255,000. In 2014-15, the HR director had a remuneration package of £175,000, which by the following year had risen to £225,000. The members of the government have indicated that a change is likely, and the government has announced new deals for police and prison staff and announced that the pay remits for each pay review body will be agreed as part of the budget process for next year. Such reviews need to be comprehensive, we believe. We mustn't forget how the pay restraint started either. It had to be introduced as part of the efforts to rebalance the economy and restore sound finances after 13 years of Labour mismanagement. Great strides have been made, shown by the huge reduction in unemployment, and I hope very much that all members of Council will welcome those reductions in unemployment, now the lowest level of unemployment in 40 years, and particularly we welcome the low levels of youth unemployment. There are record numbers of people in work, more than 3 million extra since 2010, and many thousands of families are no longer dependent on welfare benefits. We're also seeing high levels of investment and confidence from businesses, encouraged by lower corporation tax rates, which at the same time have ensured that the sums raised by corporation tax have actually increased. There have been welcome changes in personal taxation too, including large rises in personal allowances, which enables people to keep more of what they earn before having to pay tax. This is especially beneficial to the lower paid, both public and private sector. This is practical, conservative compassion. The security of the right... It is regrettable.
Can you please let elected members speak?
It's regrettable that the members opposite choose to belittle measures which actually improve everybody's daily life, Madam Chairman. So this is practical, conservative compassion. The security... Excuse me, Madam Chairman.
Can we have order in the chamber, please?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The security of a regular pay packet and being able to earn more before paying income tax should be welcomed. Labour dogma, unfortunately, stands in the way of both compassion and practical benefit. This ill-founded motion fails to recognise the full picture, and we can't support it, although we do welcome Government's recent announcements. I would add, Madam Chairman, that talk of pay rises will be irrelevant if Labour under Jeremy Corbyn are elected, because the economy will be in ruins, unemployment will soar again, and there'll be no jobs, never mind pay rises. Even the Shadow Chancellor is expecting a run on the pound. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wallace. Councillor McGarr.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to add, once you hear from the Conservatives the phrase 13 years of Labour mismanagement, it means they've lost the argument. And also, when you hear a Conservative linked with compassion, you know they've lost their mind as well.
Councillor Drummond.
I just find it quite insulting on behalf of the public sector, the statements that Councillor Wallace are coming out with. I suggest she moves away from the coast to take her head out the sand.
Madam Elected Mayor.
I would just like to make a comment, Chair. I'm not quite sure which world or which town or which area that Councillor Wallace lives in. I'm out regularly, day after day, talking to residents within North Tyneside, and certainly the messages she's given me are not the messages I'm getting from the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak to the motion? Can I invite the mover of the motion to have the right to reply?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I think the first point raised about increase in productivity, well, I wonder where Council Hodge has been the last 5 budgets, because our staff have delivered year on year efficiency savings by doing more work between less of them, and by increasing the efficiency of all the services that are provided in this council, all through negotiation and all through cooperation. They should be congratulated, not derised, as you've done before on some of these issues. As for Councillor Wallace, well, she mightn't be happy with the answers, but perhaps it was because she was asking the wrong questions, because she made her point about chief executives in the health service. Well, they're not covered by the NGAC. They are covered by different pay negotiations altogether. And therefore, no wonder if you didn't get an answer on the chief executives, because they're not covered under the NGAC. And I suspect that you should perhaps read up on what the pay claim is and who it affects. Because what it does is it affects those on the lowest pay at the moment. When you talk about the issue of the balance the economy, well, you've balanced it okay, but totally out of balance. What you've done is those that caused the crash, the bankers and the city institutions, have got away with increased and reduced taxing for themselves and increased profits on their company on the backs of the low paid of this country, forced them into poverty traps, forcing nurses, forcing doctors, forcing council workers into, as was said before, food banks. But once again, the Conservatives opposite aren't even in line with their own government. Their own government recognised that, said before. 4 of their leading cabinet members and front bench spokesmen have called for the ending of the pay cap. I would have thought even Councillor Wallace could support Boris Johnson, but obviously he's too far to the left for her. and therefore she can't do it. We've seen time and time again when we've brought motions here, the Tories have opposed it, and then a couple of weeks later, or in this case probably in the November autumn budget review, the Tories national government will reverse it and say that they're going to get rid of the pay cap. Now, I was specifically in there, didn't say at what level the pay should be. I said, but anything over 1%, we should have a proper negotiated pay cap break, look at the issues of low pay, look at the issues of the national minimum wage, and look at the real problems of where the lowest paid have all been bunched together at the bottom, and these are the people that are paying the price for the government's failure to meet the policy. You wouldn't mind if after 6 years it actually cured it, but they haven't. They've made it worse. And there's no prospect of it becoming any better. And that's why even there, said their people are saying, let's break it. And they already have, as you mentioned, for the prison and the police officers, once again, two derisory offers, because one's just a lump sum for 1 year, and you talk about pensions, but that lump sum wouldn't count towards pensions. And the other one is a one-off bonus as well. So I would say that let's work on behalf of the low paid in the council who deliver the good services to the public, rather than complain about it might cost the bankers and the city investors a little bit more money. So I would ask the council to support this resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Pickard. We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? We have 43 for and 4 against. Thank you. The motion's carried. Right, next we'll move on to item 5. Can I ask Councillor Glindon to introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I'm pleased to introduce this report tonight, which is to seek full Council's approval of the 16-17 audited statement of accounts. Members have been given access to the statements in the group rooms, and draft accounts were published on the Council's website. Before I hand over to Ms. Oz, there's one change and one observation I'd like to make. The one change is the accounts follow the decision made by the Cabinet yesterday, which all members have been notified of, regarding the decision not to extend the contract with Kia North Tyneside beyond April 2019. This has no impact on the financial aspects of the accounts. It will be added as an item to the note as part of the 17-18 forward look by the Head of Finance. The observation I'd like to make is about the difficult financial climate in which we are working, created by the national government. Members will notice that the accounts show a net overspend of £426,000. That's the first technical overspend that I've ever shown as a Cabinet Member of Finance, and that's since 2005, although we did have a break in between when other people took it over. Explained to the Cabinet in June the local consequences of national decisions on the national living wage, the consequent rising of social care and cost pressures to the NHS make it increasingly difficult for local government to discharge our statutory duties. I acknowledge that Cabinet, the outturned figure reflected a great deal of hard work by the Mayor and Cabinet to manage those difficulties. Council want to know that because we could see this coming, each of the last 2 previous financial years, despite opposition, we've made sure we increased our reserves by over 7 million to ensure we could handle this kind of issue. The Audit Committee considered these reports last night, and there were no issues raised. We've now got Gareth Davies from Ms. Oz here tonight, and I would like to ask him to speak on the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. As in previous years, I'm here to present our audit completion report and to describe the main results of our audit work, and obviously respond to any points. As has just been mentioned, the Audit Committee met last night, and we took the Audit Committee through the report that you have in your agenda papers in some detail, and so hopefully that's assurance to the Council that these matters have been considered in some detail there. Before I talk about the content of the report, I'd just like to thank the Council officers in the finance team and more widely across the authority who assisted us in carrying out the audit, responding to our many questions and allowing us to complete the work on time, and we're very grateful for their input to that. All of our work's complete, and provided, of course, the Council approves the accounts tonight, that we'll be signing the audit report that's attached to the report as Appendix C. There are no changes from the completion of our work to the draft that you have in this report. And crucially, both our opinion on your financial statements and our value for money conclusion, they're both unqualified, which means there are no matters that we need to report in giving those two key parts of our report. That represents substantial achievement by the Council in 2016-17 in delivering very close to budget its overall position against the background of, as I've said every time in the last few years, increased financial pressure through reduced central funding. And so, as we describe in the value for money section of our report, we've paid a lot of attention to the savings programmes implemented by the Council, the achievement of those programmes and where they've slipped, other savings being identified. And as I say, I think it's a significant achievement to have delivered the result that's been delivered for 16-17. Looking ahead, of course, the usual auditor note of caution about the steep savings requirement that still faces the Council. And although reserves are adequate, they're not high, and so the Council faces some very difficult decisions in the year ahead to achieve a similar result next time. So, having said that, that completes the remarks I was going to make to the Council, and happy to take any questions or points on our report.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Do we have any questions? Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got three, if I may. On page 18 of the report, the auditor reports that the NHS claims that the Council owes it £2 million for sexual health funding. The Council disagrees and has made no provision in the accounts for this sum, which is to increase by £500,000 a year. Is the auditor satisfied that this is prudent, and shouldn't the matter be settled anyway?
We've obviously paid a lot of attention to that matter, having raised it in that way. Yes, we're satisfied that Council has a prudent position on this, and it's not uncommon for there to be disputed amounts. Maybe uncommon between two public bodies, but it's certainly not unheard of. But the way it's treated in the Council's accounts is properly prudent in our view.
Thank you. The second one, page 23, section 6, the lower table there. It says halfway down, management will endeavour to ensure that so-and-so. Surely this should read, management will ensure that. Is there any reason why you're not so sure of yourself there?
Obviously that's management's response rather than ours, so we're reporting what we've been told.
They're going to try but not necessarily succeed. Okay.
Is that the end of the questions, Councillor Hodgson? Sorry, did you have another question?
One more for me. The auditor draws attention to the budget over expenditure in 2016-17 and the adverse budget position at the end of July in the current year. Is the auditor assured that the Council is pursuing a course that will ensure the 2017-18 budget will balance by year end?
One of the features of being an auditor is we look at things that have already happened and comment on them. We can't make predictions, so I won't do that. But I would say that the Council's track record of delivering its savings programme is impressive over the last few years, and so provided those systems continue to operate in that way, then we think there's a good chance of delivering what's required. But as I say, I can't predict the future.
Councillor Barry.
It's on page 13 of your report. It's about deleted journals. Do you know what the process is for deletion of journals and what's actually in these journals?
Sorry, what page was that, Councillor Barry?
It is there, page 13, page 24. And it's description of deficiencies. And it says, to the effect, there were valid explanations and evidence of deletion of 2 of these journals. However, there's no evidence supporting 1 of the journals.
This part of our report, we're repeating findings and recommendations we made last year, and we're updating the position, having followed them up in 2016-17. So as you'll see at the bottom of that table, it says our testing in 2016-17 didn't identify any issues in this respect. So the recommendation we made last year has been implemented satisfactorily.
Okay. Yep.
Is that the end of your questions, Councillor Barry?
Yes, that's me.
Councillor Mason? Councillor Barry, can you switch your mic off?
Thank you, Chair. My question's been asked by another councillor.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mason. Do you have any other questions? Thank you, Mr Davies, thank you. Can I ask Councillor Glindon to move the report?
Was that before it's seconded? It hasn't been seconded yet, so I'll move the report and ask Council to recommendation set out in paragraph 1.2.
Thank you, Councillor Glindon. Can I ask Councillor McMullen to second the report?
Yeah, second the report and reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. I'll now invite members to speak to the motion. Do we have any speakers? Can I invite the mover of the motion to exercise the right to reply?
I did mention about the overspend. And what I'll say about the overspend is that when we set that budget, or last year's budget, not the year before budget, we had an underspend of nearly £500,000. And we put that aside because we knew we were getting into difficulties, which I said in my opening remarks. The party opposite wanted to spend it on highways down the coast. And we said, no, we're going to put it aside because the way your government's treating us, that we need money put aside because we don't know which way, we don't know what settlements we're going to get in this and the other. And there was a big kick-up from across the road from the party opposite, not the Lib Dems, they're good. The Tories. So I'm just so glad that we held out and did what we did, because we were able to bring that back into balance the books. Times are getting hard. I mean, there's nobody in this room from any party can deny that the government's starving councils. And if a similar thing happened again this year, where there was an underspend, I would suggest to the to the Cabinet and the Mayor, Cabinet and the Council that that spend was put in reserve again. And I feel no shame in doing that. So all I'll say is that, is anybody going to speak after me or not?
It's you.
At this point I would like to thank Gareth Davies from Mazars and Diane Harold, who done a walk-on bit with the paper site. Gareth I've worked with for a lot of years, and obviously things that are going on where we might not be working with you again, we don't know yet, well I don't know yet. But I'd just like to thank you for the work you've put into this council over the past 10 years that I know of, because you were with the Audit Commission before that, and then in the Mazars. I'd like to thank you both, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Glindon. We'll now go to the vote. Those in favour? That's unanimous. And can I add my thanks to Gareth Davies and Diane Howell for the hard work of that report. Thank you. All right, we'll move on. Item 6. Change of the Constitution. Can I ask the elected Mayor to move the report?
Thank you, Chair. The Council is requested to consider a proposal to reduce the membership of the Planning Committee, as set out in the Committee's terms of reference contained in the Constitution, from 15 members to 11 members, to to facilitate focused and efficient decision-making on that committee. The political balance of the committee, with the revised number of seats, would be 9 seats allocated to the Labour group and 2 seats allocated to the Conservative group as at present. The revised quorum for the committee would be 3, currently 4. The Constitution Task Group has been consulted on this proposed change to the Constitution and is supportive of the change. I would like, therefore, to move that the Council agrees to this change as set out in paragraph 1.2 of this report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. Can I ask Councillor Frank Lott to second the report?
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second the report and reserve the right to speak, please.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Hodgson.
In paragraph 152, Chairman, the Mayor read that out just now. The reduced size committee is required to facilitate a focused and efficient decision-making committee. Does this mean that the present committee is unfocused and inefficient?
Chair, the answer to that is no.
Does it need better leadership? That's the other question.
I resent that question, but it's typical. I expected it from Councillor Hodgson.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have any other relevant questions? Right, thank you. Okay then, I invite members to speak to the motion. Nobody to speak? Right, we'll go straight to the vote then. Those in favour? Against? 47 in favour, none against. Thank you. Oh, whizzing through business today. Right. Don't jump the gun, all right, sorry. Right, we move on to item 7. Can I ask the elected mayor to move the report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Members will recall the council meetings held on the 19th of January and the 23rd of March this year, when discussion took place on the implications of the Sustainability and Transformation Plan on North Tyneside. The need to explore with neighbouring local authorities the ramifications of the STP across the whole of Northumberland, Tyne and Wear and North Durham was raised as part of that debate. This report requests the Council to agree to the establishment of a joint health scrutiny committee, which will be the vehicle through which the respective local authorities will respond jointly to any consultation in relation to proposals for substantial developments and variations to health services. The protocol and terms of reference for the proposed joint committee have been drafted by the respective local authorities, setting out the role and the function of the joint committee, as well as the proposed representation required from each council. And these are attached at Appendix A to the report. At its meeting on the 7th of September 2017, the authority's Adult Social Care, Health and Wellbeing Subcommittee supported the establishment of a joint health scrutiny committee, and the proposed draft protocol and the terms of reference, and to submit the proposal to Council to approve. The local authority, Public Health, Health and Wellbeing and Health Scrutiny Regulations of 2013 require the formation of a joint scrutiny arrangement where the NHS body or relevant health service providers consults more than one local authority on proposals to make substantial variations of developments of services. They provide that all the local authorities who are residents receive such services must participate in the joint scrutiny arrangement for the purpose of responding to the consultation, using the method most appropriate to the areas and issues being considered. The Council's Adult Social Care, Health and Wellbeing Scrutiny Subcommittee can still discuss service changes and STP-related matters in respect of the impact on residents in North Tyneside. Its views can then be fed into the Joint Scrutiny Committee via the authority's appointed representatives. The subcommittee will also remain the sole required consultee on proposed changes that only impact on residents in North Tyneside. In moving the recommendation set out on paragraph 1.2, I would like to propose Councillors Margaret Hall, Councillors Gary Bell and Councillors Ian Grayson, in accordance with the political balance requirements with the councillors and respective being appointed as substitutes. The reason why I've gone with those three people to represent is because they are cabinet members for those particular areas that they will represent our authority, and they are now, as far as I'm concerned, and haven't been for some time apart from Gary Bell, who will be, leading on those particular things within the council, and will have the necessary, at the minute, up-to-date information as to where we're at as a council and what our needs would be. That does not stop any other councillor for having some input before they take their places up into that, and they'll continue to have input into that chair.
Okay, thank you for that. Can I ask Councillor Pickard to second the report, please?
Yeah, could I formally second and reserve the right to speak, other than to tell you that our three reserved delegates will be Councillor Craven, Thirlway and Clark.
Thank you, Councillor
Thank you.
Pickard. Are there any questions? Councillor Hodgson.
I'd just like the Mayor perhaps to clarify some things. Health is of great interest to all members of this council on all sides. Will this new committee in any way connect with the membership of the council? Or will it be will this subject be removed from and separated away from the members? There seems an increasing trend for members to be removed from decision and discussions outside this place, and I just wonder if this is one more.
I would just like to say, Chair, that is not my intention. It's a really, really important thing as far as I'm concerned, and to be quite honest, I think every member should have some input into this particular aspect.
How do you achieve that?
Well, I think you would have access to the three people who are going onto the committee. They would report back to council. The scrutiny committees would have some input into them too, and then they would report back too. And I would hope, if you were dissatisfied, you would come and see me and we'll put that right.
Does that finish your questions, Councillor Hodgson? Are there any other questions? Sorry, Councillor Marion Huscott.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to ask sort of an extension from that question and from the comments of the elected mayor. On page 3 and 59, I'm not sure which way to say it, under administration, it simply says that the minutes of the meetings will be supplied to each member of the Joint Committee, and goes on to say that it will be sent to the chairs of the constituent authorities, relevant ONS committees for information. I was just asking if there was means for this to come to the relevant scrutiny committees, if there's something pertinent for them to discuss, or at least for an information, as a matter of course, as an information item, so that members are kept up to date with what's happening.
I think we would ensure that would happen, Councillor Fusscroft. I think this really, really is important, and I think most of us here are really concerned about the health service, in particular about our residents in North Tyneside. So I would ensure that would happen. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? I now invite members to speak to the motion. Would anyone like to speak to the motion? No? Well, we'll go to the vote then. Those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to item 8. Sorry. Is it? I think it's Councillor Pickard. I've got sorry. Yes. So can I ask Councillor? Sorry. Can Can I ask Councillor Pickard to move the report, please?
Just to say that on that report, I'd like to move that it be deferred to the next full council meeting.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pickard. Is that going to be seconded?
Yeah, Chair, I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Newman. That report's going to be deferred. Thank you. Next item's a common seal. Is that agree? Can I move that the common seal be the common seal? We all agreed? Thank you. Item 10, my announcements. I don't know if you've noticed if anyone wants to join me on the Chairman's Walk on Saturday for the charities that I have, the Maggie's and the Living at Home scheme, and also the YMCA. I'd like to see you come along. It's a lovely walk along the from North Shields, from the Linscott Centre, along to past the Fiddler's Green, along the Fish Quay, and then up to the Collingwood Monument, and then back again to the Northumberland Park. Lots of activities on. Even if you just register to say that then the donations all go to the charities. But I'd like to see you there if you can make it. That'd be great. Okay, thanks. Sorry, the Mayor's announcements.
None today, thank you, Chair.
None today, apart from your hand. Sorry, Ines. Right. And item 12, questions, the members of the council. Question 1, I've got 5 questions, valid questions received for this meeting. And we've got Councillor Barry's going to question 1. Do you want your question, or do you want to have it taken as read?
I'll read it myself.
Okay, thank you.
Can the Mayor tell me what the procedure is for inspecting and maintenance of the navigation beacon at the entrance to Cullercoats Harbour, and when it is carried out?
Thank you, Councillor Barry. The navigation mast and the beacons are inspected on an annual basis each October by Trinity House Navigation Directorate, who have the responsibility for the inspection of all navigational masts shown on the Admiralty chart. However, I have to say I'm very, very disappointed to learn from Councillor Karen Lee and the members of the Cullercoats Harbour Working Group that the leading beacon mast, which is a major navigational aid for the harbour and aids approach to the harbour during low light levels and unfavourable weather conditions, was damaged some time ago and has not been carried out. The work has not been carried out by Capita's asset management team. Sadly, I have to report, they considered it, I know you're smiling, but this is the truth, they actually considered it non-essential repair. This has now been brought to my attention, and I've asked that this be treated with priority, and understand that the repair has now been ordered with a local contractor, and the repair is planned for completion this month.
Councillor Barry, do you have a supplementary question?
Can I just reply to that? I'm pleased that she now understands that is a piece of safety equipment, and it's essential. The harbour could have been closed because that wasn't working. Because in rough weather, you can't actually find out where the channel is to come in through the harbour. So I'm pleased you're actually doing something about it. Thank you.
Okay. Question 2, Councillor Barry, your second question.
I'll read that one as well. Can the Mayor tell me if North Tyneside Council have purchased any private or housing in North Tyneside area? How many and the total cost?
I certainly can, Councillor Barry. The Council asked the North Tyneside Trading Company Development Limited, who is owned by the authority, to undertake a programme to help it to deliver affordable homes across the borough and support the delivery of the Affordable Homes Programme, which aims to provide 3,000 new homes by 2024. The trading company has purchased 2 homes from the open market for a total purchase price of £212,450 to be able to let at affordable rent levels. The company is also currently in the process of considering a further 5 more homes across the borough, and it is the Council's intention to continue with this purchasing strategy, which not only helps to deal with issues of rehousing, but also builds the asset base of this company. Following a review of the costs associated with building properties, it was determined that the most cost-effective and quickest way was to buy property from the open market and offer them for rent. This is not using council funds, and I have to stress that. The funding of these purchases is via a grant from the authority of the Section 106 Town and Country Planning Act and can only be used for affordable housing. North Tyneside Trading Company has also delivered 13 new affordable homes to rent in Camperdown, and the priority was given to the local residents there. The homes will be let at an affordable rent, which is 80% of the current market rent level for this type, size and location of the property.
Thank you. Councillor Barry, do you have a supplementary
No, she's
question?
answered my second question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barry. Question 3, Councillor Mason, do you want to ask? You want it as read? Taken as read. Councillor Harrison, do you want to respond, please?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Mason. I think he is aware that this is a national issue, and unfortunately the Council does not have powers to control whether developers sell new homes as freehold or leasehold. However, I do share Councillor Mason's concern about this national issue. No resident should be subject to any unfair practices. I would therefore urge Councillor Mason to lobby the government requesting this change. In the meantime, I have asked officers to provide me with the detail of the extent of this practice in North Tyneside, and that they highlight our concerns with house builders involved in the delivery of new homes in the borough. Should officers uncover that this practice is widespread in North Tyneside, I will ask the elected mayor to write to the government minister to ask for legislation to be introduced to control this issue.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Chair. There's a possibility that the council's trading company could build houses to sell. So could the mayor confirm that they would be sold freehold?
Councillor Harrison? The Councillor Harrison.
Well, I think they would look at that. I mean, certainly if they build those, it would be up to that company themselves to decide that. So, you know, if there is a balance within that freehold and leasehold, but generally we move to freehold. But obviously we're trying to develop as many homes as possible which are affordable and for rent. But we do understand that there may be opportunity to buy, to build, to sell. And I think that would be the company's business, but in reality that would be more towards the freehold.
Thank you. Question 4, Councillor Maureen Huscroft, would you like to ask your question or take it as read?
Take it as read, Chair.
Councillor Pickard, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. To date, the former Buddle Arts Centre remains vacant and is subject to negotiations for a lease of the property to the Tyne and Weir Building Preservation Trust. The transfer is currently at contract discussion stage and a draft lease has been prepared by the Council's legal team. The building is in a poor condition and the Council is currently working with the Trust to ensure that the building is used moving forward. We're in the process of agreeing the scope of works required with the Trust to bring the building up to a safe and operational state. It remains the responsibility of the Tyne and Weir Building Preservation Trust to bring the building up to an operational standard as part of the proposed transfer. This will form part of the lease agreement. I understand that the Trust is looking to secure the necessary funding to allow them to carry out repairs and to bring the building back into use.
Councillor Huscroft, do you have a supplementary question?
Only briefly to ask if I can ask the council members can be kept informed of what is happening with this.
Yes, I'll ensure that we send you details once the lease has been signed, okay?
Thank you. Councillor Nigel Huscroft, do you have a question?
Take it as read, Chair.
Take it as read. Okay. And Councillor Harrison, would you like to respond, please?
Thanks, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Huscroft. There are just over 40,000 gullies across the borough, which cover over 899 kilometres on the highway network. It takes around 18 months to complete a full cycle of gully cleansing. During this period, every gully in the borough is inspected and emptied at least once. Any blockage that are reported in between inspections are attended to on an ad hoc basis. The Council has invested an additional £4.75 million into flood risk reduction work. This investment has included the purchase of 2 new highly tech gully cleansing vehicles. The vehicles are equipped with smart technology which measures the amount of silt in the gully pots and determines how often they actually need to be emptied. For the past 12 months, these new vehicles have been carrying out their cleaning regime and gathering additional data. The data collected will allow us to move towards a revised and improved risk-based operational, ensuring the most efficient gully cleansing regime, which will be the best use of our resources. In relation to the 2 members' inquiries that Councillor Huscroft has raised, I understand that 1 gully has been inspected and a works order raised to deal with the blockage, and another is due to be completed by the 9th of October 2017, in line with the 30 working days of the work being raised.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Do you have a supplementary question, Councillor Huscroft?
No, just to thank the Cabinet member for the response. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that's the end of the business for tonight's meeting, and I'm glad we've seemed to have agreed on quite a few things there. And thank you for your attendance. Thank you. If you'd like to join me for a drink in the parlour afterwards. Thank you.